My wife's affair with her boss, who then stole $250, $0 from our joint account and framed me for embezzlement, led to a brutal divorce and a bitter courtroom battle over our estate worth over $1 million. I never saw any of it coming. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here telling a story about how my wife turned out to be the biggest liar and cheat I've ever known. Honestly, I thought we had a good thing going, married for 8 years, building a life, sharing everything. She was the kind of woman who knew how to charm her way through any situation, always acting like she had it all under control. But then, out of nowhere, everything fell apart. And looking back, I can see the signs now, but at the time, I was blind. It all started about 3 months ago. At first, I noticed was acting a little different. She was more distant, spending more time on her phone, hiding her screen when I'd walk into the room. She'd come home late from work more often, claiming she had to stay late for meetings or client dinners. But the excuses didn't sit right. With me, she was always good at lying and I knew her too well. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. We had a good life, decent house, 2 cars, a joint savings account with over $250, $0 in it, and a mutual respect that I thought was unbreakable. But something was off. What really tipped me off was when I noticed her bank statements. She'd been withdrawing cash more frequently, sometimes under strange circumstances. Once I saw a charge at a hotel downtown, something I'd never even heard of before. I asked her about it and she brushed it off, saying it was a business trip she'd forgotten to tell me about. But I knew better. The way she avoided eye contact, the way her voice wavered, those little tells, you don't need a degree in psychology to recognize deception. Then came the phone call. I was in the living room, scrolling through some emails when her phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and saw a message from a number saved under a strange name Mark. My stomach sank. I didn't recognize the number, but the message was clear enough. Can't wait to see you tonight. Miss you already. My heart started pounding. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I waited, trying to process what I'd just seen, but I knew was having an affair. The pieces fit too perfectly. She was lying about her late nights, hiding her phone, and now this message confirmed it. I kept that message on my phone, staring at it every night, feeling sick. How long had this been going on? Was it just that one night, or had it been going on for months? I didn't know, but I felt betrayed on a level I'd never experienced before. The worst part was the silence that followed. She continued to act normal, cooked dinner, laughed at my jokes, acted like everything was fine, but I could see it in her eyes. She was lying. I could tell she was trying to hide something. It was like living with a stranger, someone I didn't recognize anymore. And yet, I didn't say anything at first. I just watched, waiting for the right moment to confront her, trying to decide what to do next. The trust I once had was crumbling, and I knew I was about to face something I wasn't prepared for. A few days went by, and I kept the evidence to myself, trying to figure out what my next move should be. Every time left for work, I'd sift through my thoughts and the mounting evidence. I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I was angry, hurt, and confused all at once. The worst part was the way she acted like nothing had changed, laughing at stupid jokes, pretending she loved me. But I saw through it. Her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore, and her excuses about work seemed more and more flimsy. One night, I finally decided I couldn't take it anymore. I sat her down after dinner, trying to keep my voice even, not letting the anger seep through. I told her I knew about the affair. Her reaction was instant. She froze, her face went pale, and then she started to lie. "It's not what you think," she said, brushing her hair back nervously. "It's just a misunderstanding. Mark and I are just friends. It's nothing serious." She looked me dead in the eyes and lied through her teeth. I could see she was trying to manipulate me, make me doubt what I'd seen. I didn't buy it. I told her I had proof, screenshots of her messages, the hotel charge, her bank statements. That's when her mask started to crack. She snapped at me, calling me paranoid, accusing me of spying on her. "You're overreacting," she said, voice sharp. "You're just jealous because I work late. It's not like I'm cheating on you." That was the moment I realized she was a master manipulator. She was throwing blame at me, trying to turn it around, making me feel guilty. But I knew better. I knew I wasn't crazy. The thing is, her lies only made me angrier. I felt betrayed on a level I'd never experienced. I'd always believed in honesty, in loyalty. And now I was staring at the woman I married who was out there screwing her boss, a guy named Steve, who was about 10 years older than her and had a reputation for being a real sleazeball. I found out that had been sneaking around with him for months. She even told her friends she was unstoppable, that she was having the affair of her life. But it wasn't just the affair that crushed me. It was what she did afterward. I discovered that Steve, her boss, had been siphoning money from our joint account. Over $250, $0 disappeared, just gone. I found out from our bank that he had set up some kind of fake business account in her name, funneling funds through that. The crazy part was involved in the scheme, probably convinced she was untouchable. I couldn't believe how deep this went. And then the ultimate betrayal. I learned that Steve, the guy who was sleeping with my wife, had been framing me for embezzlement. The bank flagged suspicious transactions, and suddenly I was being investigated by the authorities. All the evidence pointed to me. I was being accused of stealing that money I never touched. Meanwhile, was living her secret life, and Steve was getting richer at my expense. I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. My world was crumbling and I was left standing there, stunned, trying to process how everything had turned into this nightmare. I couldn't sleep. Every thought was consumed by betrayal and anger. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it coming, how I could have been so blind. I was furious at for lying, furious at Steve for stealing from us, and most of all, furious at myself for trusting her so blindly. I'd always been the guy who believed in honesty, who thought that if you loved someone, you could trust them with everything. Turns out, I was a damn fool for ever thinking that. Now I was sitting on the edge of losing everything. My marriage, my reputation, my peace of mind, and I didn't even know where to start fixing it. The more I dug into the mess, the more I realized how far gone everything was lying through her teeth, trying to spin her way out of it, but I wasn't buying any of her bullshit anymore. I started to see the bigger picture, how she'd been manipulating me from the start, all while she was out there screwing her boss and stealing money. It was like a bad movie, except it was real life, and I was the one getting played. I remember the night I found out about the money theft in more detail. I was at the bank speaking with the branch manager, trying to understand how nearly $250,000 could just vanish from our account. They showed me the transactions, big wire transfers to an account registered under Steve's name. I couldn't believe it. I had trusted with our finances, and she had used that trust to hide her affair and steal from us. The bank told me they suspected fraud and that Steve was involved. That's when I realized I had to act fast. I started to piece together how I'd been funneling money, probably to support her lifestyle with Steve, maybe even to cover the costs of their affair. What made it worse was the fact that she had lied about her job, her hours, everything. She claimed she was working late, but she was probably meeting Steve, making plans and siphoning off our savings. The betrayal was so complete that I felt numb. It was like my entire world was collapsing in on itself. In the midst of all this chaos, I decided to confront again, this time with everything I had. I sat her down one afternoon, my hands trembling, and told her I knew everything. I showed her the bank statements, the wire transfers, the hotel charges. Her face twisted into a mask of anger and defiance. "You don't understand," she spat out. "It's complicated. Steve is helping me get out of a financial mess. It's not what you think." She looked me straight in the eyes, and I could see she was lying, but she was good at it. She had mastered the art of deception. Her excuses didn't hold water. I saw right through her. I knew she was lying, that she'd been lying for months. I could feel my blood boil. I told her I was done with her lies, that I was going to take control of the situation. I contacted a lawyer, started to prepare for a divorce, and looked into how to recover our stolen money. The shock was overwhelming, but I knew I couldn't let her get away with this. Not without consequences. Meanwhile, kept up her act, trying to manipulate everyone, her friends, her family, even the bank. She insisted she was innocent, that Steve had tricked her, that she was just a victim of circumstance. It was all lies, of course. I had proof, and I wasn't going to let her spin her way out of this, but inside I was devastated. I'd loved her for so long, trusted her implicitly. Now I was faced with the cold reality that the woman I married was a lying, cheating thief. The emotional toll hit me hard. I'd wake up in the middle of the night overwhelmed with rage and sadness. I couldn't believe how deeply I'd been betrayed. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I shared everything with, had been living a double life. I felt so stupid for not noticing sooner. I kept asking myself where I went wrong, why I trusted her so blindly. It was a painful lesson in how appearances can be deceiving, how someone can hide their true nature behind a pretty smile and sweet words. In the end, I realized I had to protect myself and my future. I couldn't keep living in this nightmare. I decided to fight back, not just legally but emotionally. I sought counseling, trying to process what had happened, to heal the wounds. I also started to rebuild my life, focusing on work and my friends. I knew I'd never fully forget what she did, but I could learn to move on. I made a vow to myself that I'd never let anyone manipulate or betray me like that again. Trust, once broken, takes a long time to rebuild, and sometimes it can't be rebuilt at all. The legal process was a nightmare. I hired a lawyer, and from that moment on, everything moved so fast I could barely keep up. Lies kept piling up. She insisted she was innocent, that Steve had manipulated her, that she was just trying to get out of debt. But I had the evidence, and I wasn't about to let her spin her way out of this. The bank reports, the wire transfers, her secret messages, all of it painted a very clear picture. The day I filed for divorce, I knew I was making the right choice, even if it hurt like hell. I'd been betrayed on every level: my trust, my marriage, my savings, my reputation. But I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. The court battle was brutal. Hired her own lawyer, and it turned into a war of attrition. She lied in court, claiming she was a victim, that she had no idea where the money went. She even tried to turn the tables, accusing me of being controlling and paranoid. But I had the proof. I presented everything I had: bank statements, text messages, witness testimonies. Lies started to unravel quickly. The judge wasn't buying her bullshit. It became clear she was complicit in the theft, that she'd been orchestrating her escape with Steve all along. The judge ordered an audit of our finances, and I watched as the truth slowly came out. Steve's name was all over the wire transfers, and his fingerprints were all over the scheme. The emotional toll was enormous. Sitting in that courtroom, I felt humiliated, angry, and exhausted. I hated that I was there, fighting for my life and reputation, while sat there trying to look innocent. But I knew I had the truth on my side. The judge awarded me the majority of our estate, over $1 million in total. I was relieved, but also bitter. I knew would never get what she wanted from me: my trust, my respect, or my love again. After the divorce was finalized, I had to deal with the fallout. Moved out, but not before trying to take everything she could: clothes, jewelry, even some of our furniture. I put a stop to that quickly with the court's help. I also had to work through the damage to my reputation. Friends and family slowly started to see what she was really like, how she lied, cheated, and stole. It was a long, painful process, but I was determined to rebuild. I learned a lot from this experience, mostly that trusting blindly is dangerous. Had been so good at hiding her true self, and I'd been too blind to see the signs. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I fought for my rights, stood my ground, and came out of it with my dignity intact. I realized that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out who you really are. And I know now that I'll never let anyone manipulate me that way again. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the warning signs sooner. I wish I'd listened to that nagging feeling in my gut. But I also realize that it's easy to miss the red flags when you're caught up in love and trust. Still, if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: never ignore the small signs. Trust your instincts. And if you find yourself in a situation where someone's lying, cheating, and stealing from you, fight back. Because in the end, the truth always comes out, and you have to be ready to stand up for yourself. After everything was settled legally, I thought I'd finally get some peace. But the aftermath of all this mess hit harder than I expected. Moved out, and I started the long process of rebuilding my life from scratch. The house felt emptier than ever, and even though I had most of the money now, thanks to the court, I felt hollow inside. The trust I once had in her was shattered beyond repair, and I couldn't help but replay every lie, every betrayal in my mind. It was like living with a ghost of the woman I thought I knew. I threw myself into work and tried to keep busy. But some nights I'd lie awake, thinking about how she had manipulated me, used me, and stolen from us. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it coming, how I could have been so blind to the signs. I'd always believed in honesty, yet she had lied to my face for months, maybe longer. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming. I'd trusted her with my life, and she'd spent that time planning her escape, making her affair with Steve into a full-blown scheme. The worst part was the financial fallout. Even though I got most of our estate, the damage was done. Our savings were drained, and I had to work hard to restore my credit and rebuild my financial stability. I learned that money isn't everything, but it sure makes life a lot easier when you're not constantly fighting to fix the mess someone else created. I also had to deal with the shame and embarrassment, how I let someone manipulate me for so long. I felt like a fool, but I knew I couldn't dwell on that. I had to move forward. One thing I did do was cut all contact with her. I blocked her number, deleted her from social media, and made a conscious effort to distance myself emotionally. I realized that holding onto anger and resentment only kept me stuck. Instead, I focused on healing, on rediscovering who I was outside of that toxic relationship. I started going to therapy, which helped me process everything: the betrayal, the loss, the anger. It wasn't easy, but slowly I started to feel like I was reclaiming my life. I also sought out new friendships, reconnected with old friends, and spent more time doing things I enjoyed. I realized I'd let my life revolve around her for too long, and now I had to rebuild my identity. It was hard, no doubt. Every time I saw a happy couple, I'd feel a pang of bitterness. But I knew deep down that I deserved better. I deserved someone who wouldn't lie, cheat, or steal from me. Looking back, I learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you resilience. It's a brutal lesson, but a necessary one. I learned to trust my instincts more, to listen to that little voice inside that warns you when something's wrong. And most importantly, I learned that I am capable of surviving even the worst kinds of heartbreak. The scars will always be there, but they've made me stronger. I now know what to watch out for, and I refuse to let anyone manipulate me again. So, if you're going through something similar, my advice is this: don't ignore the signs, trust yourself first. And when the time comes, don't be afraid to walk away, no matter how much it hurts. Because in the end, your happiness and integrity are worth more than any amount of money or false love. Keep fighting for yourself and don't let betrayal define who you are. You're stronger than you think. Now, looking back, I realize how much I've grown from all this chaos. It's been a hell of a ride, one I'd never wish on anyone, but it taught me some hard truths about trust, betrayal, and resilience. I used to believe that love was enough to get through anything, but I've learned the hard way that trust is the foundation of any real relationship. Without honesty, everything crumbles, no matter how much you want it to hold. I've come to understand that betrayal leaves scars, but those scars don't have to define you. I've learned to rebuild my sense of self, to value my own happiness above all else. That doesn't mean I forget what happened. It means I refuse to let it control me. I've found new purpose in rebuilding my life, focusing on my career, my health, and my future. I've also become more cautious, more aware of the red flags I once ignored. I don't jump into anything blindly anymore. Trust, I've realized, is something you earn, not just give away freely. One of the most important lessons I've learned is that sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself. That feeling of being completely broken and betrayed can be a catalyst for growth if you let it. It's easy to fall into bitterness and regret, but I chose to use this experience as a wake-up call. To be stronger, wiser, and more guarded, but never closed off to love again. Because, despite everything, I still believe in the possibility of genuine connection. I just know now how to protect myself better. To anyone reading this who might be in the middle of their own betrayal or heartbreak, know that it's okay to feel devastated. It's okay to grieve. but don't let it consume you. Take your time to heal, to process, and to rebuild. Trust your instincts and don't be afraid to walk away from someone who doesn't deserve your trust. Your happiness is worth more than any betrayal. And in the end, you'll come out stronger, wiser, more resilient, and ready to face whatever life throws at you. So I close this chapter with a sense of closure. I've learned that even in the darkest moments, there's a chance to find light. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can start climbing again. And I know now that I'm capable of doing just that. I may have lost a lot, but I gained a new understanding of myself. And that's the greatest victory of all.